Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are in the world. We would like to welcome you to our Industry Experts Talk webinar series. My name is Ligia Chiari. I am an employment counselor and mentoring coach with JVS Toronto's pre-arrival program, Canada InfoNet. And today we have Dr. Yilmaz Dinc from TRIEC, presenting the topic of navigating COVID-19 labor market as a newcomer in Canada. So before we begin, just a few housekeeping tips for the participants and a few words about JVS Toronto. The webinar is being recorded. The length is approximately 45 minutes. All participants' lines will be muted. There's a Q&A session at the end of the webinar. Please type your questions in the questions window. And also please take time to complete the post-webinar survey in the end. You'll also receive an email about it. And the recording will be posted on JVS Toronto's blog. About JVS Toronto and our services, JVS has over 70 years of experience in helping job seekers reach their potential. We have 9 locations in the GTA, including downtown Toronto, North York, Markham, Scarborough, and Etobicoke. Programs for newcomers, youth, people with disabilities, the unemployed, and the underemployed. Our pre-arrival program, Canada InfoNet, is a free national 8-week program for approved immigrating professionals. And we also have Employment Ontario for job search navigation, job matching, and job development, workshops on resume and LinkedIn targeting, access to financial employment support, and more. During the COVID-19 pandemic, we continue to support our clients province-wide with online services. So to register, if you're not yet a client and you are in Canada, go to www.jvstoronto.org/new-clients. Okay. I am happy to introduce our presenter today, Dr. Yilmaz Dinc. Yilmaz is a research and evaluation manager of Toronto Region Immigrant Employment Council, TRIEC. He holds a PhD in strategic management and has worked in international development for around 6 years at the United Nations Development Program. Welcome, Yilmaz. I will let you take on and continue to tell us a little more about your story. Thank you.
Thanks, Ligia, for the introduction, and hi, everyone. It's my utmost pleasure to be speaking to you today about how to navigate the COVID-19 labor market. You heard a little bit about my professional background, but I'm also a newcomer myself, one that is relatively established. It's my 3rd year in Canada. And the insights and tips that I'll be talking about today will not only build on the research and insights from the settlement sector from my professional work, but also my own experience as an immigrant. And I hope you will find all of this very useful. A little bit about my organization before I go into the details of my presentation. Toronto Region Immigrant Employment Council, TRIEC in short, is working in the Greater Toronto area to help immigrants live up to their full talent potential. We work with employers to create more immigrant-inclusive workplaces where professionals like you can work in jobs that match their areas of expertise and training. At the same time, we work with our community partners like JVS to offer solutions that empower you in the labor market in terms of job search, in terms of networking, to ensure that your career plans are realized. We work in GTA, Toronto, Peel, York, Durham, and Halton. And there are similar organizations to TRIEC across Canada, immigrant employment councils that serve a similar purpose. So I'd like to start with providing a brief overview of the Canadian labor market, especially from the perspective of how it looks for newcomers and prospective newcomers like some of you. I think it's important to acknowledge that the job market for non-immigrants and immigrants is different. Newcomers face unique challenges that non-immigrants don't usually face. And whether it's an economic boom time or an economic crisis time, this fact is a given. And while there are many reasons for why this happens, three reasons that are really standing out. Number one is employers, unfortunately, don't always value foreign education and work experience. They are much more comfortable in hiring somebody who has a Canadian diploma or Canadian certificate from a Canadian school. We are advocating that international talent should not be judged based only on where they gain this experience, but more on how they can perform and what competencies they have to be successful. But this is still a challenge in the labor market. Number two is different soft skills and job search strategies might be required in Canada that you may not be familiar with. Canada has its own culture of looking for jobs. It has its own way of finding, identifying talent and landing that talent in a job where it's relevant. So it's important to acknowledge that. At the same time, there are different assessment and recognition processes involved for those in regulated professions. If you are a doctor, you have to go through a licensing process to be able to practice here. The same applies to engineers, accountants, and for some other professions where the immigrant joining the labor market looks a little bit different than if you're in a non-regulated profession. And we'll be talking a little bit more about what this means. There's also some good news. Canada has really been improving in how it leverages immigrant talent to empower them and help them land in jobs that they are trained for. In the last 15 years, the unemployment gap between newcomers and non-immigrants has been narrowing. And perhaps most importantly, more and more employers are coming board with the idea that they need to attract and retain immigrant talent. That's critical for their success. Now, what this means in terms of you as a job seeker is that there are several strategies that you need to follow. These are cross-cutting in the sense that it doesn't matter if it's a time of economic growth or if it's a time of COVID-19 crisis. These strategies are required for you in any time. And we will discuss a little bit more in my following slides how they evolve or change during COVID-19. But it's important to understand that these principles, these strategies are really important for your career journey. And some of them can even start before you land in Canada. Number one is, as obvious as it may seem, learning about your occupation and sector in Canada. Now, you might say, I'm an engineer. I worked in the automotive sector, so I'll just look at, the engineering sector and automotive sector in Canada, look at what job opportunities there are, what are the trends, but it might go a little bit beyond that. And I will give you a personal example in that sense. I worked in international development before moving to Canada, and I was trying to see, how the international development jobs would shape up here. I quickly learned that most of this sector is actually based in Ottawa, and most initiatives are government-led by government staff. And as a newcomer, this didn't look very suitable to me. So then I started to think, how can I leverage my own experience and expertise, but land in a job where my skills are still relevant? So that made me land in the nonprofit sector. I looked at, what are the opportunities out there. Then I realized the immigration sector is actually quite sizable, and there's a lot of need in terms of research, mobilizing insights to help newcomers. So that's how I landed in my job. Like, not only looking at your own occupation and the sector that you have experience in, but looking at others where your experience might be relevant is really important. Another point is networking. You will hear this a lot. Some of you might have already heard about it. You might be saying, yes, we know it's important, but I cannot highlight this enough that networking is critical for your career success in Canada, and not just in terms of landing in an immediate job, but finding career success in the longer term and climbing the corporate ladder. Now, one of the things that I would like to share in that sense is around 80% of the jobs are never posted in Canada. you can only reach them by leveraging your networks, connecting with the right people, right experts, and this really becomes instrumental to your job search. Now, I wouldn't call it a mistake, but one, let's say, thing that doesn't immediately materialize with networking is it will not land you in a job perhaps immediately, but it will help you to keep a network alive that will help you to identify opportunities and pay off in the longer term that will help you with your employment goals. At the same time, it's important to remember that the division between personal networking and professional networking, or personally building your social ties and professionally connecting with other experts, is not necessarily that separate in the Canadian context. It would be helpful, for instance, when you are looking for a job, to tap your personal network to see if they know any professionals, if they know any experts that might be working in your field, that might be able to provide you with useful tips. Because that's exactly, for instance, how I landed in my first job here. A friend of a friend was working on immigration, and when I saw this opportunity, I contacted the friend who introduced me to this professional, who took the time to introduce me to the Canadian immigration system, how research and evaluation works. It really helped me to succeed in the interview that I had, and maybe made it possible for me to deliver this presentation to you today. So it's important to use networking both, to facilitate your social transition to Canada, but also, to advance your career goals. That takes me to my next point. So searching for jobs, yes, you have to use all available platforms, LinkedIn, Indeed Canada, Monster.ca, but the really important thing is to apply strategically. I know it's harder to practice this than said, because the bills are piling up, you want to find a job, you are new in the country, but at the same time your chances for a job is much higher if you can show that your expertise, your occupational insights, your sector knowledge is really relevant to that job, having a unique value that would help you to differentiate yourself within the competition. That's what really makes the difference. And on top of it, if you learn about the job, if you network with for instance, the HR manager who has posted the job on LinkedIn, or the person, if you can see which team the role is going to work with, if you can reach out to the members of that team, ask for advice, ask to learn more about the position, not for the job, but this role is really interesting to me. It fits with what my duties and responsibilities in my previous job. I would be really interested to learn more. Even if you don't get that job, first you are expanding your network, and second you are gaining insights and experience into how similar jobs might look like and what could give you that edge to kind of beat the competition. Another important aspect is, as I said, the way you look for your jobs back home and the way you look for them here are different. And this applies to occupations as well. There are different ways that occupations operate. And in the Canadian context, this might be different. So I highly recommend looking into programs that will help you to get that occupation and sector-specific insights, such as mentoring, such as bridging programs. This could really make the difference of landing in a job and giving you the kind of technical perspectives that you need. Choosing the program is basically dependent on what you need the most. In my case, for instance, I wanted to make sure that I interview well, so I signed up for an interviewing workshop, and that's what I needed. But if you don't need the support, going to the generic services may not give you the specific insights that you are looking for. It's important to identify what you need, work with your settlement counselor, work with settlement agencies to identify that need and choose the right program for yourself. And if you do that, these programs are really useful. It's also important that you might have heard, it's okay to submit multiple resumes. That is correct. You have to customize your resume based on each job you apply, for each sector that you apply. This is not something that you need to hide. This is not something that you should be worried about. Oh, I'm submitting one resume here, but another there. Would this be an issue, it is not. And it's actually better for you because different jobs require different skill sets and the composition is different. So sending the same resume puts you at actually a strategic disadvantage. You have to show how your own competencies fit with that job. At the same time, you have to have a short elevator pitch to be able to communicate your competencies and achievements to a person that you have met. You might have heard of this, but I also find it really useful to do it over social media platforms where you can connect with other professionals. Because, especially given the COVID-19 situation, we are not likely to be meeting professionals every day now. But you can do the same in written form when you are reaching out to people. Here are my skills, here are my achievements. I really want to work in this occupation or in this sector in Canada, and it would be great to connect with you. I'll be elaborating a little bit of how this looks like during COVID-19 in my coming slides. Lastly, during any time, job search is a time-consuming process for everyone. It's easy to play the blame game. It's my fault. I'm not looking hard enough. Maybe I should go sign up for more training. Should I consider, am I missing something? It's not your fault. It's a competitive market here. Even if you follow all these strategies, job search is going to take time. But it's important to take a broader career growth perspective because things that you do will strengthen you and you will find that job. It's just going to take time. And if you implement the right strategies, it will make your following job easier and unlock your career advancement prospects. Now, let's come to COVID-19. What are the economic effects, what we know about it and what we don't know about it? We are in the worst economic downturn since the Great Depression, and the Canadian economy is unfortunately going to contract around 6% in 2020. My message to you is it's really important to take this into account. Not all sectors are equally affected, and it's important to read down the lines here. Jobs that cannot be done remotely, basically if you cannot work from home, and jobs or organizations that are dependent on consumer discretionary spending, meaning that spending that cannot be postponed. For instance, you can delay buying a car, but you cannot delay buying groceries. So organizations are affected differently based on how their income structures look and if they can operate their workforce remotely. That's why travel, hospitality, and retail have been hit really badly. In March, for instance, Canada lost around 1 million jobs, and half of all those jobs were concentrated in restaurants, hotels, and retail. In April, the data just came out recently, Canada lost another 2 million jobs, and the losses were again mainly in the service sector, but it expanded to construction and manufacturing. Now, what this means for you is, this is where the effects are strongest. Where are the effects not as strong? Professional, scientific, and technical services, jobs like marketing, engineering, banking, finance, and insurance. These sectors, as of now, with the data that we have, are not under strong pressure. I'm saying at this point in time because as we are in the worst economic downturn possibly of our lifetimes, these things might change. But it's important to look at the insights that we have now to inform our job search process. The same goes for telecom and IT. Actually, e-commerce and IT have been trying to fill jobs even during this crisis times. So it's important to pursue these opportunities. And I will iterate a little bit on this in the following slides, but don't make the mistake of thinking that, oh, IT is programmers, software developers. That's not true. IT companies also have HR, IT companies also have sales, health sector also has accounting teams, also has IT teams. Sometimes we try to, in our heads, we compartmentalize how sectors and occupations that operate, and it's so important to be aware that sometimes opportunities are much more cross-cutting. And an important thing to remember is that employers are always looking for talent. Right before the coronavirus crisis, around half of Canadian employers were saying that they can't find the right talent to fulfill their business needs. What this means is if you have the skills and talent that employers need, you will be able to find a job. and we will discuss how in COVID-19 coping strategies that could look like. Ligia, I can't move my slide, if you would be able to kindly help. Thank you.
Thank you.
So how do we do, looking at all the strategies that I shared for newcomer success, and given the coronavirus situation, how do we plan for our job search? Number one is to remember that networking did not stop. Yes, we are all working from home. Yes, we cannot meet for in-person coffee chats, but you can still connect with professionals. And as you know, I was mentioning around the 30-second elevator pitch, you can do the same over social media or professional networking platforms like LinkedIn. You could introduce yourself to an expert in your field. The important thing to remember is not just saying, I would like to connect with you, but turning it into an interesting and informative professional relationship. And the way you can do it is to share with that person some content that they would be interested in, or some content that they could engage. Here's an article that that I found interesting. Here's an article that I wrote myself around engineering sector engineering occupation in the automotive sector of India. I really find it interesting how things are evolving here. Just don't say, I would just like to connect with you. Offer them something to build on, something to build your relationship on. And I will give you a very concrete example. I was having a networking connection with the CEO of a small nonprofit, and I mentioned my previous work in international development, working with corporations, and that's something that's not very common because development is usually seen as a government's business. And that person turned out to be passionate on the topic herself, so she invited me to a meeting. That turned into a job opportunity for me, which did not materialize, which is also an important lesson that networking doesn't always lead to jobs. But it's important, but that connection still helps me today to think about different ideas, to learn about what's going on in the sector in Canada. So always remember that networking can go both ways. Try to build it in an informative way. Not only you need that person's tips and advice, but you can also offer them something in return. You have global insight, you have insights and perspectives from your own country, from your own occupation, from your own sector. See it as a two-way street. Another important recommendation is to diversify your job search. You have seen, how sectors are affected. The same goes for companies. Some companies are affected more than others. So you might be wanting to work for, let's say, Boeing or Marriott International, but this is not the best time to pursue those employment opportunities. So it's really important to think outside of the box, looking into different sectors, especially since occupations are cross-cutting and opportunities might lie elsewhere. And most of the insights that I've been sharing with you around, which sectors are hiring or which sectors are experiencing job losses, doing some research online really helps. This information doesn't, reside in highly technical or academic journals. Most of it is in the news, in some professional magazines that are widely available. So it's important to do your research online and keep being on the lookout about which occupations are hiring and which are letting go. Ligia, if you can move to the next slide. Now, when you are looking especially beyond your sector or even in cases beyond your occupation, it's really important to highlight your transferable skills. What do I mean by that? Some skills are required across sectors. Communication, analytical thinking, teamwork. You gain these regardless of the sector that you work in, and you should be highlighting these in your job applications and in your resume when you're applying for a job that you may not have experience for. And you might be, for instance, working in the travel industry, let's say back in Nigeria, and you might be looking for a different sector here that you have never worked before. But you have these skills that would help you to facilitate that transition and thrive even though you don't have that sector-specific experience. And also remember that this goes back to the point on using the available settlement supports. There are ways for you to gain sector and occupation-specific insights that could help you to hone and present your transferable skills to prospective employers so that your job transition is much easier. Now, another critical component. Remember the point on how employers are always looking for talent. The best way to respond is to become that talent, learning new skills and new competencies that will help you to land in those jobs. During coronavirus, I think more than ever, we realized the importance of online learning. And in Canada, luckily, a lot of learning content is available online. I'm not talking about long resource or time-intensive qualifications here. You might choose to pursue them, but what I'm highlighting here is more around courses around skills like project management, skills like coding, skills like cross-cultural communication that would really give you an edge in the job market. For instance, if you are a permanent resident in Canada, you can sign up for the Toronto Public Library. Toronto Public Library has free access to LinkedIn's learning platform, Lynda. So a lot of content there is being offered free of charge. So using those opportunities, expanding your skill set, especially when you are looking for a job and you might have a little bit extra time. Also, given that we won't be having in-person coffee meetings or can go out for some time, it's really important to expand your skill set. That will really give you an edge in an uncertain job market. Again, around all the recommendations that I've been highlighting, building your professional brand. It's really important. This shows what your added value is, not just for a specific job, but as an expert, as a professional. If you are working in marketing, what makes you unique? You might have some sector experience back from your country. You might have used a skill in an innovative way. Share your experience, write blogs and generate content that not just say, here are my achievements, but your story. This is how I used a skill to solve a business problem. This is how I see the trends in engineering evolving. This is how I use the software program to do something innovative. These stories not only give something to your network to interact and engage and learn from, it helps you to build your image as an expert. Your network, if your network identifies you as an expert, your job search process becomes much easier because you are known. Oh, marketing, this Yilmaz guy really knows about it. So creating that image is really, really important, especially given that most jobs are not posted and we have to access them through our network. Ligia, can we move to the next slide? Now, when we are searching for jobs, when we are approaching others for tips and advice, it's really important to remember that, and I highlight this in the beginning, professional relationships in Canada are also personal. It's important to build friendly relationship with your contacts. If you are connecting with someone for a virtual coffee chat, always ask, how are you coping with the crisis? How is your family? How are your kids? Is everything okay? Don't forget that people born here or established immigrants are also facing their own challenges. Their jobs might be uncertain. They might need compassion themselves. The lockdown might be taking a toll on their mental health. So if they are not responding to you or if they are not as helpful as you expect, don't forget that they might be going through the issues on their own. So that brings me to my last point. It's really important to be positive and resilient. Yes, there are job losses and uncertainty in the labor market. Yes, we do not see how things will land. And as a job seeker, as a newcomer to Canada, it's hard to foresee how this will affect you, but things will get better. I spent some time myself as unemployed. I was saying, is it me? Am I doing something wrong? I'm doing these strategies, but it was taking time. And then I landed in a good job, and I'm now giving back by sharing my insights and perspectives. So things will get better. Just hang in there and follow these advice. Try to be compassionate, and things will improve. Before I conclude my presentation, I also wanted to share some sources that will be useful for your job search from TRIEC. Ligia, if you can go to the next slide. We have a program called TRIEC Mentoring Partnership where you are matched, once you are in Canada, you are matched with a mentor from your own occupation. So that person can provide you with advice and tips to navigate the labor market. This comes back to the point of the importance of occupation insights in landing a good job. We also have online tools for networking and job search. If you are uncertain about how to do it or what are some best practices that you would like to leverage, you can check our e-learning modules as well as tools on the Mentoring Partnership website. And lastly, we have around 77 professional immigrant network associations that we are hosting as TRIEC, which are occupation and community-specific networks that help newcomers and immigrants find good quality jobs and develop their career paths. So I also recommend checking that and see if your occupation is there, signing up, getting in touch with their leaders. These people are immigrants like yourself, newcomers like yourself, so they will be happy to connect and provide advice as necessary. Thank you so much for participating to the presentation, and I'll be happy to answer your questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Yilmaz. It was a very inspiring presentation. Thank you for sharing your story as well. So we're going to look at some of the audience's questions. Sorry. We also have some information on JVS. So if you have a question, please post on the questions box, because that's where we're looking at them. So let's start with, so do you have any advice for, we have many clients who are outside of Canada, right? They're still waiting to land and they are unsure of when to land. Do you have any advice on the timing? Should they wait more if they can, or if they should come and do their landing whenever the flights are available, of course? So that's in general a question that people are asking, if they should wait for
I
6
think
months.
right now I have more insights on, as I'm based in GTA and Ontario, I would be able to provide a more informed answer, based on my province and my city. Things in Ontario are slowly opening up. The restrictions for shutdown are easing day by day, and in the coming month or two, I think things will be back, or it won't be back to the normal, but we will have a better idea of how the new normal looks like. I think getting clarity around, landing and, how the economy will look like, you'll have a better idea in the next month or two. So again, it's an individual decision, and I can't give a straight answer, but I think we will know more about how the labor market or how the society and economy will look like in the next month or two.
Sure. And do you feel that employers are hesitant with recruiting permanent residents who are still outside of Canada at the moment?
So it's a very good question. I wouldn't say that they are hesitant, but coming back to the job search strategies that I was talking about, how do we find a good quality job? Through networking and through getting to know about the position, through getting in touch with people that we would potentially be working with. It's much harder to do this, when you are abroad. Perhaps now with the virtual communication, people might be more receptive, but before it would be easier to conduct some of these strategies, have in-person coffee chats when you were here. I don't know if that transition happened where employers are completely confident now that most of our interactions are virtual. They will be fine to hire someone just through virtual communication, except of course for some sectors like IT where this practice is common. But I see value in still reaching out, still learning about the position. Even if you don't get it, you'll be more prepared for your next job application.
Thank you. Another question about employers. Do you see that do you see a trend on taking different steps on the hiring from the employer side after the pandemic ends and the immigration starts? So do you think something's going to change because of the pandemic?
I think immigrant talent is going to be an important part of the economic recovery. As I shared, employers are hungry for talent. Of course, this depends on your area and your occupation. The demand might be stronger in sectors that are less affected: finance and insurance, IT, telecommunications. I think it's important to position ourselves to the sectors that, at this point in time, that are least affected and are still posting jobs. I think that would be a valid strategy.
Thank you. So you touched on the importance of networking. You talked about some strategies, and we got a question: how to start a LinkedIn conversation if I don't have my own blog or something exciting to share with the concerned person? Do you have any tips on that?
I think that's also a good question. Everybody has an interesting story to share. I think it's important to take a step back and look at your achievements. I know it's really hard to immigrate to Canada. I know it's really hard to get the permanent residency. Most of us are established professionals back in our home countries that have experience for 5 to 10 years. You do have achievements. It's important to look at from the perspective of what did I learn? And what kind of stories that I can tell. Maybe looking into the storytelling, like on blogs, on how to tell stories, how to present your achievements would be a good idea. Believe me, all of us have achievements. It's a matter of how we present them. And at the same time, it's also looking at, based on the experts, where have they worked, what are their areas of interest, what are their areas of, like what did they publish about, what do they write about. I'm a researcher. I worked in international development, and if you come to me and say, "Oh, I came across this interesting development project in India, and I thought this would be of interest to you, and I would like to stay connected," that would be a great entry, because that would teach me something. It's not just I'm connecting to you just for the sake of connecting to you. You're offering me some content to engage with, something to build, something to communicate with you on.
And like you mentioned, this is a time to improve your skills, right? Storytelling is also a skill that is very useful.
Exactly.
So on that topic of improving and expanding skills, someone asks, is there a way to volunteer or contribute my time and skill set? I imagine they mean with the lockdown and social isolation. Do you have any tips on how to volunteer and improve your skills through that at the present time?
That's a good question. Volunteering it's really important to volunteer in a way that builds on your existing skill set and somehow relevant to your expertise. Don't just go and volunteer in somewhere that's completely irrelevant to what you do or your area of training. Again, it doesn't need to be a perfect match, but it's important that it somehow uses your skill sets and your abilities. For instance, I volunteered for researching some funders for a therapy center. And while it was not in my area, I was still using my research skills, still using some of my analytical thinking to help find funders, and it really helped me to expand my network. So again, from a point of giving back, of course you are free to volunteer and contribute in any area you want. But if you are doing it with a professional goal in mind, it's important that it matches or it leverages some of your skill sets and expertise.
Sure. Thank you. And also about skills and talents, how to find out what are the skills and talent that are most needed at the moment?
So before the pandemic started, you could say that there was a balance between hard skills and soft skills. Hard skills being the technical skills that we hear about, coding, software development. There are always open job positions there, and they get jobs rather easily. And soft skills, communication, analytical thinking, leadership, with the coronavirus, with the uncertainty and the constant need for employers and businesses to adapt, I would say soft skills gained even more importance.
Mm-hmm.
In most sectors and in most organizations, it's a period of transition. We don't know where we are going. We don't know how, for instance, the sharing economy is going to look like. We don't know how travel or hospitality is going to look like. And to manage that, you don't really need technical skills. You don't need a programmer or you don't need a coder to anticipate. You need people who are creative, who can develop innovative solutions, who can be flexible and change the way they approach the things in quickly. So I think it's a good time to kind of ramp up or present your soft skills and kind of invest on them to stay ahead of the competition. Of course, it doesn't mean technical skills are not important, but soft skills are more important than ever.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Thank you. So back on the LinkedIn, someone asks, do you suggest producing content on LinkedIn itself or having a specific blog?
I think as long as you are sharing your insights and you are creating content, the platform itself doesn't matter that much. LinkedIn itself has recently introduced a way to post blogs, and if your content is creative, I know that they pitch it further, and that might help with your networking efforts. The important thing is to have some content that would showcase your talent, not by saying, I did these are my achievements, but kind of telling that story of how you did this. In the meanwhile, teaching other people or helping other people to learn how they can leverage a skill to solve a business problem or solve a case, and at the same time promoting your personal image. So I think so in terms of the platform, it doesn't matter that much. It's the content that you put in, it's the story that you tell.
Mm-hmm. I see. So also about that topic, just so we ask all the questions about this at the same time, someone is saying, pertaining establishing a professional brand, I am a blogger and having my page on Facebook. What is your recommendation? Should I link it with my LinkedIn or should I post all the blogs separately on LinkedIn? Do you think that makes a difference?
I think you may want to position it a little bit differently. The users of Facebook it's a different audience than the users of LinkedIn. Mostly, for professional content and professional posts, LinkedIn is a good platform to share. But if you don't have a specific expectation from Facebook, you can all link them. I don't see a challenge there. Just acknowledging that the post will be seen by different people. Facebook is usually our immediate network, people that we know. We know that it has an older audience base, and people who don't often use it for professional purposes. While for LinkedIn, it's mainly for career and professional goals.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, keep it professional, certainly. All right. We also have, what channels should we keep an eye on to stay updated about the status of the economy and businesses in Ontario and Canada to let us gauge when to travel to Canada? So what sources of information do you recommend?
I think, with the information age and the rise of social media, Twitter, I found as a researcher actually quite a good source of information. Government of Ontario, if you are intending to land in Toronto and Ontario, following the City of Toronto and Government of Ontario accounts would be insightful. They share updates pretty much every day. On what's happening with the economy and how the reopening process would look like. Specifically for immigration, on TRIEC account, we try to share insights on, economy, job losses, or how sectors are being affected. Everything that I have shared with you today, I've been also posting on TRIEC's account to keep people informed. And I'm sure JVS also has a lot of content available on their channels that you could follow and benefit from.
Sure. Thank you. Yeah, we have our LinkedIn page as well, so that's also something to keep an eye on, and we're also trying to share from relevant sources, right? So talking about information, we have another question. Recently, the immigration minister shared numbers on job losses due to COVID. How long do you feel the market will take to fill up these lost jobs? Who will get more priority, the people who already have Canadian experience or the ones who just landed?
The job recovery process, again, we don't know how exactly that's going to look like. Initial data, unfortunately, shows that women, youth, and workers in precarious jobs are more at risk. And we know, newcomers who can find a job in their own fields tend to end up in underemployment or minimum income jobs. And that might, if the coronavirus recovery process takes longer, you might expect, more immigrants being forced to taking survival jobs. And then if these jobs are being squeezed because of if the recovery process in retail or similar sectors are takes longer than expected, so there might be an effect on newcomers. With that being said, again, most of immigrant professionals we know that are in fields that are not hard hit with this crisis. It's really important for organizations like us to make the case that immigrants should be employed in their field of training, because that's where the jobs are, that's where the need is. The only reason right now the risk is high because immigrants are getting underemployed in jobs that are under the threat of being lost or to the effects of COVID-19.
Okay, thank you. So we're gonna start. Gonna pick two more questions for us to start to wrap up. There is one specifically about your experience. It says, "Hi, Dr. Dinc. I'm also from the same background of international business development. I understand you had to change the line of work, not only sector, but the whole profile. Do you think we can get the similar profile when we start finding jobs? If not, please share your experience. How did you handle it psychologically?"
I think it's important to be resilient. Looking back, I think I put too much pressure on myself. You're saying I am not doing something right. That I need to make this transition. It's obvious. It's obvious that I won't be able to land in my own line of work or in my own sector. So I know it's psychologically challenging, but it's really I cannot highlight this enough that it's not your fault. It's not only up to you. Just by being here, just by listening to me, just by looking at the tips and strategies that we are offering, you are already doing your part. You're already trying to see how you can navigate the job search process. It takes time, and what I find really useful in terms of resilience or mental well-being is talking to people like you. I see right now we have over 150 attendees. Most of us will, most of you will go through the same process that I myself went, and it really helps to talk to people who are in similar positions, also to exchange advice and tips and join your networking efforts if you are in the same occupational sector. So I would really say look into ways with connecting with other newcomers and other immigrant networks.
And talking about the importance of connecting, could you emphasize, that's a question that we got, could you emphasize on the effectiveness of the mentorship programs?
So mentorship, well, there are different forms of mentorship to start with. There are some mentorship programs that are mainly aimed at social integration, and there are mentorship programs that facilitate, you to land in a job that matches your field and expertise. Our TRIEC mentoring partnership program is of the second category, where you are matched with somebody who is in the same occupation as you, so that they can provide you more targeted guidance. In terms of impact, the program in the last 15 years has helped over 18,000 newcomers, and the employment rate in their field is around 77%. So our program is quite effective in providing that occupation-specific insight. It's not the only program. There are other programs out there. For instance, some of our professional immigrant network associations that we are hosting, they offer their own mentoring programs based on occupation, based on sector. I think the important thing to keep in mind is, what is your expectation from the mentorship? Is it just somebody that can provide you generic guidance and tips and answer your questions for social integration purposes, or is it somebody who can give you very concrete, very specific, technical, occupation-specific insights? If your goal is the second, I highly recommend checking our mentorship program and similar programs, because they do help with your career journey.
Mm-hmm. All right, thank you. Yes, so many insights, and we are getting a lot of questions actually. So we have to start wrapping up. If your question was not answered, please email us at webinar@jvstoronto.org, and we will try to get you a response from Dr. Yilmaz, right, Yilmaz?
Yeah, sure. I will be happy to answer the questions that we didn't have time to go through now.
Yeah, we had a very good participation. We have lots of questions in our question box. We'll try to gather them and post it in our blog and LinkedIn page as well, so we can get these answers out, hopefully. Right. Thank you very much, Yilmaz, and thank you everyone for attending, and stay safe.
Thank you, my pleasure. Stay safe and healthy, everyone.
Thank you.